The sound was like coming from under the hood. 2008 Volvo XC70 3.2 liter. Came in for a coolant leak, which I fixed. Not relevant to this video, but it had a leaking water hose down there where it goes into the block. But got that fixed. Anyway, customer had been complaining for a while that this car sounded like a tea kettle whistling in the morning. And I heard it once, but it only did it for 3 or 4 seconds and it was gone. So after I got this coolant leak solved, I'm just looking at it, it's running, I'm looking at it. I'm like, I wonder what that noise could have been, And I'm sniffing around and everything looks normal. And I reach up and I take the oil filler cap off with the engine running, and there's this just huge sucking sound coming from there. Just, and I put it back down, and of course it sucks the cap right down. Well, that ain't right. Full vacuum inside the engine. So the whistling sound she's hearing is probably like what happens on the 1.5 GM engines where the internals and the valve cover go bad, where the PCV is, and it'll whistle right past the crankshaft seals. So I'm thinking that's the sound. Anyway, so what's the solution? Okay, I'm into it right now, and I think I'm gonna have it fixed. But I had to stop and do this video, and then I'll follow up whether it fixed it or not. Anyway, so I get looking, and okay, how does the PCV work on this engine? There is no PCV. There's no valve per se that you can go and look up on O'Reilly to find a PCV. There is none. But I get pecking around, and I get into a Volvo forum, and then we find out that there's this oil box back in here in the rear that has within it what they call a PCV. And that is this, I get this light over here, that is this arrangement right here that snaps into the top of this oil box. So I had to pull this off. It wasn't that bad. These two screws in the rear were kind of a bugger right down in here, but the rest of them weren't too bad. Swivel socket. Anyway, so I get it off. Dorman 917147 makes the replacement for this. It's got the diaphragm, the spring, and the cap. But now, to get the cap off, here's where it becomes interesting. There's catches on here where this cap snaps down on there. This is not made to be serviced by someone like me, an independent in the shop. We're supposed to buy this whole box for $200. But I said, okay, I'm going to give this a go. So, but what you got to do is you got to break the ears off of this here without hurting this box. You got to get in here and cut the ears. And then what I did was I sliced this thing in half. Very carefully sliced it in half with a die grinder, you see, and got that to where I could then push it that way and release the rear clips. You see those rear clips are back in here, right? So you got to be able to release those and get it off without hurting any of these catches. So okay, I'm there now. Now I'm going to put it back together, and I'll be back with a follow-up to whether it fixed the problem or not. It's fixed. Problem solved. Before, when I would pull this off, it sounded like a wind tunnel rushing into the engine. So that was definitely the problem. Like I say, the biggest challenge was cutting it in half. When you cut it in half, you got to be careful with your die grinder when you're going down the side there that you don't go in too deep and damage the surface that cover sits on. You don't want to do that, because then the whole thing will be shot and you'll have to buy that whole box. So that's the challenging part there, is just getting this top off without breaking the ears on the box. But that's it. It works. So if you got a Volvo that's making a tea kettle sound in the morning, check that. Pull this off, see if you got air rushing in there, and if you do, that's your problem.